The AFCA's 35 Under 35 Coaches Leadership Institute is the premier education and networking opportunity for the country's top young coaches. Full-time assistant or head coaches who will be 35 years old or younger on January 1st are encouraged to apply between July 1st and 31st of this year. For information on how to apply for the AFCA 35 Under 35 Coaches Leadership Institute, the required materials for the application, and more, please visit afca.com/35 under 35. Welcome to this week's episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm. This week, we sit down with Stony Brook Head Coach Billy Cosh. In this conversation, Coach Cosh discusses following in his dad's footsteps as a coach, developing as a young coordinator, and hiring a staff as a first-time head coach. But first, a word from CoachComm.
Deuce left, check with me. If they're in quarters match, we're going to Pittsburgh or Ohio.
They're in zero.
Let's go Hippo, Seattle, wide choice. If we call the protection right, it's 6.
When a play call is the difference between winning and losing, your headset choice could be your most important decision. When the call counts, CoachComm is the only choice for clear, dependable communication. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
We got it, guys. Good job.
Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Cosh.
Coach, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on, man. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to this, man. So thank you so much for your time.
No doubt, man. We're long overdue for reconnecting, as we were kind of talking about before we got started, man. It's been a busy couple of years for you since I've seen you last.
Absolutely. A couple 1-year stops, and now I'm a head coach and going through the ring here. So it's been awesome, though. It's been a blessing. So yeah. I'm glad to be in this position. Yes, sir.
No doubt, man. I'm excited for you, and I know they are over at Stony Brook. They're excited to have you. Let's go ahead and dive on into this thing. Every podcast kind of start off with the same question. You know, when did you decide you want to be a football coach? Was this a plan, or did you just kind of end up this way?
Yeah, it's great. So obviously, I was dad of the profession. Chris Cosh, who's coached at a lot of FBS schools, and my brother and I knew football was important. We loved football. He never forced it on us, though. He wasn't that dad, to do it. He was like, "You want to be around, come around." And so when I was a young guy, I was running around. I got to be around Coach Saban, as a young coach or young guy, Lou Holtz. That was always awesome. Be around Coach Holtz and like Bill Snyder. So like my dad got to work with those guys, and I thought his job was the coolest thing in the world. Little did I know the hours that I went into. When you're younger, you really don't recognize those things. You see them, but you didn't know the grind. And I would be in those meetings and get to sit on some things and see it. And I loved it. I thought their job was awesome. They were wearing gym clothes sometimes. Some guys had to dress up, and you got to impact people. And I got to see through my dad, guys that would call him after he was done, coaching those guys, still calling him, "Hey, coach, what do you think about this?" Life, whatever it was. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, to see him do that. And I kind of knew that. I got to play the game a little bit as a quarterback. I love football. The close thing to coaching is playing. You're competitive. You're still on a team. You're trying to find ways to win. So all those things kind of drove me in the profession, and was not a great player by any stretch of the imagination. So had to be a smart guy kind of growing up. So I knew I wanted to kind of coach and I could impact people. And even in college, I remember at Houston my last couple of years, I had a quarterback named Greg Ward, who was a great player. And Greg and I was older than Greg. Greg was a freshman and sophomore. Obviously a super talented player, and I got to impact him. As an older guy, he kind of looked at me, "How would you do this?" And I could never do it, but I could always tell him, So
right.
That kind of drove me into it. And then I love it now. It's awesome. I've really enjoyed this profession, the grind of it, and being on a team is nothing better than that. So that's kind of all the things that kind of went into it.
Yeah. So out of interest, you said you and your brother. So did your brother get in the profession as well?
Yeah, yes, sir. He works for the Bears right now. He's in the NFL.
Oh, wow.
He's smart. He's in the NFL. So he works on the scouting side. Does some salary cap things there with the NFL with the Bears. So he's been there for over 5 years and played at Naval Academy. With the Notre Dame guys, NBA, really smart guy. And so both. And he's my older brother, so I had a really good influence there as well. He played, and so we're kind of a football family, man.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we are. We love the game, and we love being a part of it.
That's awesome, man. I've done this podcast for a while, and you get guys whose dad has been in the profession, and obviously I'm talking to them, so they end up coaching, but they talk about it points and times, maybe with the transitions, the moves, waking up at midnight and dad's not home, or waking up at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., dad's not home. They kind of see some of that stuff and say, hey, I'm going to stay away from this, but the laws of attraction still work, and they end up in a business. Did you ever have anything that, you looked at and you said, hey, I don't know, maybe that lawyer thing doesn't sound too bad, or anything like that?
No, I did not. Obviously I'm not very talented anywhere else in life, so I knew how to be in football. But no, honestly, I've always loved the game. I've always loved the game, appreciated the game. And I think it kind of helped. My dad never forced it, though. He wasn't that overbearing dad, and he kind of let you fail, figure it out, even in football. And when I was playing, he's always out of it. He wanted my coaches to coach me because he was a coach. He never, so it all kind of was run the right way in our family, and I was appreciative to have a great dad. And like you said, he'd be gone. The guys he worked for, Bill Steyer, they worked a lot. He was in the office a lot, but he always found time to make time for us. And Coach Snyder always allowed us to be around the building, so it was kind of cool. I got to see him in the office a lot. My mom would drop me off and run around and be at practice field. And he was a defensive guy, and I ended up being an offensive coach and offensive player.
Right.
So he always gets mad because I'm an offensive guy. And but I just saw how intense defense was. I loved it, but I was a pitcher and a quarterback, and I thought offense was a little bit easier. So I went on the offensive side. We can punt. We know where the ball's going.
Right.
So I decided to coach on offense, but got to be around that and got to see it, and what a blessing. Very thankful for it. Very appreciative of those things.
Absolutely, man. So you walked into this thing knowing at the end of your playing career you'll probably end up in a profession. So I like to ask, when that playing career did end and you kind of have that closure, that window's closed, and the NFL might not be an opportunity for you.
Absolutely.
What did you do? How did you get? I give a little foreshadowing here. You end up at Concord University, but what was your steps to get there?
Yeah, I was playing arena football, and I kind of realized, I probably get into coaching a little bit. I loved arena football; it was a neat league, but I knew I had a girlfriend at the time that I knew I was going to marry, and I wanted to kind of get into it and kind of get running a little bit. And so Concord's a D2 school in West Virginia. That was my first job. Garen Justice was the head coach, who's now at SMU now. He's a great online coach. And Tony Haynes was the offensive coordinator. He coached me at Butler Junior College, my quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, and they needed a quarterback guy, and he hired me as a GA and quarterback coach, and I learned a lot there, man. I learned a lot. So that was kind of the steps. It's kind of late. You play arena football kind of May and June a little bit, kind of the summer. So I kind of got the job in the middle of July. It was kind of late, and got there, went to West Virginia, wild and wonderful, and I loved it there. It was a great, great experience for me. But that's kind of how I kind of got into the game, was through Coach Haynes and Coach Justice, guys that I played for, and I really enjoyed my experience there at Concord.
I made a big mistake. I made a really big mistake here. I skipped over your time. You are a national championship quarterback at Butler, right? That's pretty awesome.
Well, I was on a great team.
Yeah,
we were really good. I was just a facilitator. We were very loaded on defense.
Right.
We had really good skill players. I loved playing there. One thing that was cool about junior college football, it's straight ball. You're going, man, and you gotta love the game to kind of get a way out, to go to FBS or FCS or wherever you want to go from there. And we had a really good team. Coach Morrill was our head coach. He was tremendous. He was a great, great coach. Had a lot of wins there at Butler, a lot of championships. That program was well disciplined for junior college. I was glad to be a part of it. I've had a lot of great friends there that I'm still close with, guys that are actually coaching now that I played with and were roommates. So it was a neat place to coach.
Yeah. And so before the podcast, I usually, just more for the listeners, I usually have an opportunity to kind of run through the questions, talk a little bit with the coaches about their experiences. And, I didn't even ask this question, but I kind of figured this is how it played out, right? You had the opportunity to play JC, you played at another university. So you got this network that's already built up as a player.
Right.
And your first job is a part of that network. That's the same way it worked for me at the collegiate level. My first two jobs were head coaches I played for, transferring between two schools. My question to you is, as a lot of guys, hit me up, and I'm sure hit you up, and they're trying to break into this industry. How did that phone call go? Like, hey, coach, I'm out of it. I'm done. I'm hanging up the cleats. I need a gig. I mean, what were your steps to let him know that you were even trying to enter the profession?
Yeah, that's a great question. So after I got done playing at Houston, I was playing arena football. I knew I was going to coach at some point. So I was kind of contacting people that I knew.
Right.
through it, but guys I knew through my dad or guys that I played for and knew, and hey, I want to get into coaching. And a lot of guys told me when I was a player I was going to be a great coach because I wasn't a very good player. So I was kind of hearing those things when I was playing. So I kind of just connected with guys. Hey, I want to get into it. I'll do whatever it takes. Different levels, NFL, FBS, FCS, D2, D3. I was just trying to, get my name out there and try to, reference myself. And a lot of guys say, hey, we're tight. We don't have any numbers, things like that. But you keep shooting. You keep shooting, and hopefully the ball goes in. And the ball went in there with Concord. I jumped on it, and I was excited to get on that board there to be there. But I was trying everywhere. I was sending my short resume into everybody. I didn't have much credibility, and things like that. And I was talking ball with people. And kind of in that spring when I was kind of graduating from Houston, I was just, I was kind of getting my drill manuals ready as a quarterback. I know I want to coach quarterbacks and receivers, so I was kind of getting that ready. My dad kind of helped me with that. Gave me a tip there and try to watch tape and try to grow. And so all those things kind of went to fruition there. And then Tony Haynes called me in July and said, hey, we've got the spot open at quarterbacks. What do you want to do? I said, absolutely. When do you need me there? And drove there a couple days later, and I was there rolling. It was kind of a quick transition, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, rolled almost right into fall camp there at that point in time. Now, you kind of got a little bit of I don't want to say a cheat, but, having a dad in a profession, you're able to kind of have a peek of what's going on, what it looks like day to day. But still, it's nothing like, being up at a facility early in the morning and trying to attack the day with all these roles that you're holding as a Division II graduate assistant. Was there anything that just kind of caught you off guard? Was like, man, I didn't realize this much stuff went on behind the scenes. Was there anything where you had to just look and say, dang, this is unique? Oh yeah, like emptying the buses, making sure the buses were there, cleaning the bus, equipment, video, everything. You know what I mean? Locker room duties, and weight room duties as well. I was helping out in the weight room, and it was great. Honestly, being at that level, you got to wear a lot of hats. You become humble, and you got to work, and you're appreciative of things. And that was what was great about the experience. I got to coach quarterbacks and learn how to do that by trial, by error. There's mistakes I made, as a quarterback coach and as a teacher year one, but I learned by doing. Yeah. And that's how we all learn. You learn by doing, and that was a great experience that way. And also in recruiting, with budgets and travel and things like that. And there's so many hats you got to wear, and you have to be a teammate. You have to be a teammate. That's the biggest thing as an assistant coach. No job's too big. Coach Justice the same way. He's our head coach, and he's doing things that an assistant coach would do or a GA would do. And he's a great coach. And so all those things were obviously humbling, but you appreciate things, and you love those kids there. Because they're hungry too to get it done. And so that experience was awesome. For me, because I think it made me a better coach. It really did. It really helped me as I grew in this profession. That I've been at D2. I know what it takes to win at D2, but also work at a D2. And when you get to the FBS or the FCS level, you're appreciative, you're thankful. And but it was a heck of an experience. It was awesome. Living in West Virginia was neat. We lived in Athens, West Virginia. Had 700 people in the town. It was tiny. I mean, it was little. We had a little pizzeria and a CVS, and that was it. And my girlfriend's house, my wife was from Houston, Texas, and she's like, "What are we doing? This is tiny," But it was definitely awesome, and even for my wife, even for her experience growing through this, she appreciated things, So I thought it was awesome, for me to do that. And even in coaching, I make mistakes teaching a quarterback, and I learned, okay, don't do this next time. When you do get get your opportunity, you kind of learn from those experiences. So I loved it there. It was great. Yeah, you know what, I hope this is not too long of a podcast here, because you just answered that and gave me like three follow-up questions I want to ask, but I'm gonna hit two of them. The first one, I like to keep things chronologically, but as you sit here as a head coach now for the first time, you reflect on that first job, and you're like, man, you did everything, man. There was you had to put a lot of thought in equipment and all these type of things, and then all the jobs between now and then, you obviously didn't have that much responsibility in those areas because you had a guy that was probably responsible for that. Not that you would reflect back and, every time you do something, you say, oh, I remember Concord, but do you think some of those experiences are helping you right now as you're a first time head coach? And once again, you're back now, not necessarily doing it, but you definitely are looking at these aspects that you hadn't really had to look at for a while. Absolutely. The FCS level, even for us at Stony Brook,
I've kind of been in different roles with equipment. I can talk to our equipment guy. Well, we did this, It's a way to do it, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
Same thing in the weight room. Again, I'm not the greatest, but I can kind of get some ideas and things that I've kind of done it,
Yeah.
And obviously as a position coach, I know, doing those type of things. And all those things kind of helped me become a head coach a little bit in that 1 year, because all the different hats you got to wear, different roles, and dealing with different people, what I mean, and dealing with different duties. I think it definitely did. So I think that experience did help me become a head coach now, and kind of made me grateful for things. And there is a way to do things.
Yeah.
What I mean? There is a way. There's definitely a way. We've done it there at the D2 level. So now at the FCS D1, we can find a way to get it done.
That's
what I mean? Because we did it at that level. So I think so for sure.
Yeah. And then the second question I had, and this is very specific for you. Obviously, you played at a couple of different institutions as a college player. The good thing about that is you get to see a bunch of different quarterback coaches. So, you probably build up some drill lists. I'm just thinking about my first job, and a lot of stuff is just stuff I did, stuff that I knew that was successful for me, as your first time head coach, or first time position coach. At what point in time did you kind of break away from maybe some of the drills that you did, and maybe start digging other places to not necessarily rely on your own experiences, but just make sure that you're tooling your kids to be better, period? That's
a great question. So my first year at Concord was all drills I've done in the past, whether it was at Houston, some of the air raid drills we did, they were really, really good. I didn't know why we did them.
Right.
I didn't know I just did them. But I played, and I was like, we should do it, because
that's what I did.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of, and then when I know it's the next step. I went to Indiana the next year. Sean Watson was our quality control coach. Sean Watson's a really good quarterback developer, like one of the best, I think, of all time. Really good. He coached Teddy Bridgewater, different quarterbacks through the years, and he was a QC, and I was a GA. And he's a quarterback guy, and I picked his brain. He helped me develop, and he gave me rhymes and reasons why to do things. He sat down and taught me how to coach quarterbacks. Like, for example, quarterback center exchange. That's the easiest drill in football, arguably, but it's probably the most important one. CQ getting the ball from the center. I would just say just get the snap. I could never teach it. I couldn't teach the drill. I couldn't teach the hand placement, how to route. All those things I couldn't teach my first year. And then Coach Watson's like, teach me quarterback center exchange. I'm like, why don't you get the ball from the center and go? No. Write it down and have the detail to it. That was the most eye-opening thing, for me, was that next year and the years after was really was the detail and the rhyme and reason of why you do a drill.
Yeah.
Does it show up in 11 on 11? Does it show up in team?
Right.
Does it really enhance the quarterback?
Yeah.
That next year, that's when my football IQ really helped and developed. Was really that next year at Indiana, as you'll get to next. But that's what really helped.
Yeah.
I think before it was just, I've done this. This is the way to do it.
This is what we do. Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know any better. So I think that's what helped me. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. I was thinking, one of my earlier years, I was a receiver coach, and we were probably 60-40, run pass. And an individual was 100% pass. We didn't work blocking. You had all the cool drills, man. And
absolutely.
A year or two later, you look back and say, "God, what was I doing, man?"
Yeah.
These dudes, they know how to block anything, and I'm chewing them out because they're not blocking, but I'm not practicing it, man. And so it's just funny watching your own growth, man, and just some of the things that are probably pretty typical amongst the profession. The head ball coach sitting there saying, "Yeah, my first year, we just went out there and did what I used to do. That was it."
Yeah, I knew. Exactly.
Yeah. So,
no question.
you kind of segue to Indiana there. So, you get an opportunity to go be a graduate assistant in 2016, 2017 at Indiana. I asked the same question again, especially as you're early in your career. Those first couple gigs are hard to get. How does that opportunity arise? And what was the big difference, especially with the GA role? Being at an FBS institution versus a Division II institution.
Yeah, there's two things. So Ryan McInerney is on staff there now still, was on staff when I was there. RMAC was, friends. My dad knew Jeff McInerney, his dad, and I knew Ryan so Ryan kind of helped me get in the door there with an interview. Okay. And so that got me in the door there. I met Kevin Johns, who was the offensive coordinator, and Kevin Wilson. And I was at Concord. I drove over to Indiana to Bloomington. And I was expecting, hey, can you work Visio? Can you get the coffee? Do you know how to make cutoffs, Playmaker Pro?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. So I had that all prepared. And I also had some It was me and Coach Johns and the whole offense staff. I was talking ball for 4 hours, quarterback play, plays. And I was like, whoa, it was actually kind of good, and it helped me develop. And, Dylan McCullough was on staff there at the time too, and DMC was big for me, helping me out there kind of, you're doing a good job in between. You're doing a good job, man. Keep coming, man.
Yeah.
You're good. I was like, okay. So that's kind of how it all kind of came to fruition there was, through Ryan McInerney kind of giving my name to Coach Wilson and Coach Johns. And so that was big. And Sean Payton's another friend of our families. Sean Payton and Wilson worked together at Miami, Ohio, back in the early 90s, I believe. So Coach Payton kind of helped me a little bit there as well. That was an inch. So all those things, I'm getting my dad and Coach Mack, those guys got me in the door. And then when I interviewed, it was, we went at it for a little bit. It wasn't a typical GA interview. It was football and can you teach? Can you develop? Because he wanted somebody to help coach the quarterbacks. Because Wilson and KJ and myself were kind of us three kind of working with quarterbacks and receivers a little bit. So you had to teach a little bit. So I love that experience. It made me a better interviewer for sure.
For sure.
I also got a little bit of a report after, things I can be better at to improve, or things I did well, and things to say, not to say, and how to present. So it was a great experience. That's kind of how I got in the door there. I'm very thankful for that. That was a really good experience.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That interview thing is it's just a hard thing to nail down, because if I get some other coaches on here talk about their first, GA interview, and it might be a little bit more like what you said. Hey, can you do Visio? You know how to make a PowerPoint presentation, you know how to staple papers and all that stuff, or it could be a little bit more of, hey, are you just going to be a fit? Just a little bit more, hey, what's your background, where'd you play, who you know, and then all of a sudden you're in here and almost like a positional type of interview. And I'm curious, like as you walked in there, were you prepared? I know you mentioned as a I guess you had just finished playing your senior year of ball. And that spring you were putting together teach tapes and all that kind of stuff, which is way ahead of the curve. Like my first interview is like teach tape. I'm like, what is that? But you were already kind of prepared for that. So obviously it caught you off guard a little bit, but you obviously were somewhat prepared, right?
I was. I wouldn't. I mean, I wish looking back I was a little bit better, but I was to an extent. I had quarterback individual play on. I had concepts that we ran at Concord.
Yeah.
I had it on Huddle. We had Huddle.
Right.
D2 we had Huddle.
Yeah.
So I had some cut-ups for RPOs that we were running. One run, one RPO pass, and a drop back pass to present. And then from there, they just started asking questions. Can you react? Can you know what I mean? Like what was cool is I kind of presented, and then halfway through, like, all right, what do you do with this protection? How you do with this? Like it was like boom, 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 boom. It's like they see if you can react and teach. And some guys, they want to see if you can just coach and react. That's what the game is a little bit. And Absolutely. They don't want you to have a true PowerPoint and go through each slide. Can you react and coach? That's what coaching is a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's what Wilson is. Wilson is a tremendous football coach. So that's kind of how it ended up being. Like halfway through, it was like, all right, react. What can you do? What are you going to do in this situation? How are you going to protect this?
Right.
What do you do versus pressure? Those type of things, and see if you can react a little bit. And I was caught off guard on a few questions. There's no question about it. I was only 23 or 24, and I was still trying to figure it out. But one thing I said was like, if I didn't know an answer, I said, I don't know. I would say, I don't know. I didn't bull crap it. I think they appreciated that a little bit because I didn't lie. It's like, I don't know. I'm 24. Tell me. Tell me out. How do I grow? Right. So it was actually kind of good that, those things kind of happen. So, I think to the best of my knowledge, I think I was. Yes, sir. I think so.
Well, I need to. We're going to pinpoint this little conversation right here, because I'm going to ask you a little bit about when you're on the flip side of this thing and you're interviewing here as you're putting together your first staff for the first time. So we'll come back to maybe some of that thought process, or maybe we won't come back to it, but we'll see. And just real quick, if you wouldn't mind, just like sharing some of the I don't want to say pros and cons, but just the fundamental differences of that GA experience. It sounded like you did get some hands-on experience coaching the QBs at Indiana, which is not typical. Sometimes at an FBS experience as a GA, but what were some of the differences that you found?
Well, definitely, between Concord and Indiana was, Indiana wasn't. It was me, Wilson, and Coach Johns. We were kind of splitting up. I got to run Indy a good amount, but I was really like off the field. I was getting the coffee. I was checking classes. So I still did all those things off the field: Visio, teach tapes, cut-ups. So I got to be with that experience. I got really good with a computer. That's the one thing. Compared to Concord, Indiana, I became a little more tech savvy. Yeah. And that experience kind of made me better as a position coach to a coordinator to a head coach. I can still do those things now.
Right.
Not asking our guys to do those things now. Some of our young coaches here. So I think that experience did help. with that. And at Concord, it was so much other things going on, where I had to do equipment, all that stuff, where it was more just football driven and teaching, which was good because you had different people doing those different responsibilities in Indiana, which helps in the Big Ten. So, and it was a big jump from Concord to IU. I mean, it was huge. It was a big jump, as far as speed of the game and, physicality and things like that. I forgot, hey, this is Big Ten football. It's pretty high level. I never played Big Ten, as a player, and the speed of it and the teaching and how you do things, it was definitely a whirlwind at first, in the spring when I got there. I was like, man, this thing's moving fast. And I kind of understood how Coach Wilson wanted it, Coach Johns wanted it. Really in the summer to fall, I got a lot better. I started thinking ahead what they needed. That's the biggest thing of the GAs, is you got to be 2 steps or 1 step ahead of that position coach. Always, man. So they don't ask for it. You know what I mean? And I got to learn that and see it and evaluate it early. At first, I got some butt rippings, which is probably fair, looking back, and it made me better. It made me a better coach and a better, obviously a better evaluator. So that was kind of those things that kind of went on there. Yeah.
One of the things that, and there might not be a great answer for this because I don't think I've ever figured it out was, I was very similar. I was a D2 receiver coach, but I was a GA. Then I was for a semester, I was a Division I GA. And the big thing I felt like I missed out on was the recruiting aspect. How do you stay sharp from a recruiting standpoint, or maybe learn something different, when you're behind the scenes as a GA where you can't be you can't be as involved away from campus?
Yeah, that's a great question. The one thing I was very lucky to do there, I evaluate. The one thing I think is really important in recruiting is the evaluation piece. Yeah. And I learned how to evaluate at IU players. Now I get to do all the and obviously on visits you take kids around on the car and you create conversation at the airport. That's kind of a way to practice it a little bit as a GA. Right. Is through that conversation, but obviously the calls and things like that, and the face. Obviously that's a little more limited, but the evaluation piece is really what I learned is how to evaluate, all aspects of players. I remember Greg Fry talk about what he wanted in an all-lineman. James Pad, what he wanted in a tight end, dealing it. Coach McCall as a running back coach, KJ as receivers, and Coach Watson as a quarterback. How to evaluate criteria and what you need and what you look for when you watch film. Right. You're not just watching highlight films, you're watching game film. And we would chart their game film and actually chart their completions and incompletions after a bad play, after a good play, how do they respond? Yeah. All of those things I wouldn't even thought about, if I was where I was, because I never thought of the game like that. And obviously we had the resources and the things like that to get that film model, things like that from high school kids. And that's one of the biggest thing I learned at IU was the evaluation piece. And I think the recruiting part and the talking and the communication, the relationship, that's really more so the effort that you put in and being yourself, being genuine who you are. Yeah. And I saw my dad do it through the years, evaluate. I'll go to OBs and things like that. And I got to see Coach Holtz present. And I remember Coach Holtz, one thing I thought was neat with Coach Holtz was on a home visit, he would go on a home visit with my dad, and whoever that recruit sat next to was the decision maker, was like the champion or whoever that person is. So that's something I would never even think of then, what I mean, at that point, just hearing those things. And but the evaluation piece is a big part of IU when I was a GA. They would go on the road recruiting, they go out in spring or something, in the fall and the winter. I would evaluate players. They'd send me guys, and I would have to give a detailed report to those coaches of what I saw, what I didn't see, in a player. So that was the biggest part. Yeah. And there were things where we have disagreements on. Guys would disagree with my evaluation or would agree, and that would grow me, to kind of look at things even further. So that was really good for me as a young guy.
Yeah, man, that's really cool. One of the especially as I'm on the backside of not backside, I'm out of the profession now from that standpoint, but only at one place did we sit down as a staff and say, hey, I'm Mario Price. I'm the running backs coach. This is what I'm looking for in a running back. And this is what I want to see on film. And everybody can kind of hear it so they know what to look for. And, I kind of took it with a grain of salt at the time. But to hear you say that, and really as a young guy, it would have paid dividends for me to have the opportunity to kind of hear staff say that so I would know moving forward. It's like, hey, man, I think this DB is good. But what are you looking for? Because what me and you were looking for might be totally different as me as the running back coach, versus you as the corners coach or whatnot. So yeah, that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's a great piece of information for some guys who may not be as involved with some of that to ask for some of that responsibility. Now, after your time at Indiana, it sounds like a big chunk of growth there. you get your first full-time gig as a receivers coach at VMI. Had a room before at Concordia. Was very hands-on with Indy at Indiana with the QBs. What was this like taking your first job and having that first room and, you know, not having all the extra stuff? You're the first time probably getting paid pretty decently. You know, you're starting to see yourself truly enter the profession.
Yeah, you know, obviously VMI was not a dream job for a lot of people. Because FCS-wise, they were not very good.
Right.
Just historically, Coach Wackenheim was the head coach. He's done a great job. After that, did a great job. But I wanted my first job bad. There's been a lot of great VMI coaches, like, you know, Dan Quinn coached at VMI. Mike Tomlin had the receiver job, you know, 20 years before I did.
Yeah.
But Mike, I knew there's been a lot of great coaches that came from VMI, you know what I mean, and worked there. And that's very similar to a D2 where, you know, the military is obviously precedent there, and you're an FCS, so you have to have different jobs, different hats. You got to problem solve and coach. And I just wanted my own room. I wanted to coach my own room fully. And one thing I did as a GA before is, like, I knew a lot of coordinators or quarterback guys. I knew my first full-time gig was not going to be a coordinator. You know what I mean? So I better learn a different position. So I would learn quarterbacks. I learned how to coach receivers a little bit, and tight ends. Those kind of the three avenues that I kind of want to go to, because tight ends, you're involved with the core and the perimeter. Mm-hmm. And obviously the receivers, you're the perimeter, a little bit of the core now, things that people are doing. So I didn't play receiver. You know, obviously you can tell I didn't play wide out. So those things helped me, I think, as I grew to kind of coach receivers. I saw the pass game in a different mindset, you know what I mean, the spacing and things like that. So how to get guys open. You know, as a quarterback, get open. Well, how do you get open? Yeah. You know, and those things helped me. And I got that job in 2018. I was so excited to have my first, you know, full-time gig. And I loved it there. It was a great experience. And coaching receivers, you know, was awesome. You know, we had some good players. And I got to now, obviously, you know, coach wideouts. I got to recruit. You know, became a recruiting coordinator. That obviously functioned things that way at VMI, and got to learn, you know, receivers, you know, in a whole different way. And I had some error there as a receiver coach early. You know, I mean, things I got better at as I kept repping it. I kept calling guys. I called guys that I knew in the profession to develop me, and different drills, different things that showed up on 11-on-11 film. And I loved it. I actually love coaching wideouts because you have so many different types of players. You know, you got big body, little body, speed guys. You got 14 to 15 guys in a room. You know, you got to find your best 3 or 4 receivers on the field and how they match, and you got different personalities. You know what I mean? So all those things I love and I enjoy a lot. And as I grew in this profession, I look back at that experience as a receiver coach. It really helped me as a coordinator later on, how to get guys open. Right. You know, how to create leverage, how to create space, how to create, if you're not open versus man, how do you get them open for 6, and how to get guys in soft zones. And I remember this too. I'll go back as a receiver guy, like, same thing I talk about QB center exchange, like catching the football. Yeah. You know, I was like, catch the ball. Well, how do you catch the football? You know, I go back to Coach Watson. I drilled that out, and I showed examples, and I taught it, you know, and that's just little things like that. You talk about blocking earlier, like how to block, how to do things. So those things really helped me and propelled me, you know, down the road as a teacher. And I thoroughly enjoyed coaching wideouts there. It was a great experience. I thought it really helped me.
Man, I'm getting goosebumps, man, because like that was my favorite position that I got to coach in my profession. And similar to you, my first year coaching, our offensive coordinator pulls me to the side because, you know, one of my guys runs a hitch or something, drops the ball, and I do the typical young coach thing, catch the ball. He calls me over there and says, "You think he doesn't know to catch the ball? You think everybody out here didn't know he needs to catch? How? Tell him how. What was wrong with his hands? You know, gotta give him detail." And I don't think since that time I've ever said catch the ball again. It's, you know, thumbs and pointers. You know, it's always some other catchphrase that, you know, you end up, you know, buzzword or something that you end up with. And man, it was a huge opportunity for growth, especially with you coaching quarterbacks prior to then, where you're kind of a little bit more focused on one guy. It was a challenge for me a little bit when all of a sudden I got guys, you know, 53 and a third yard apart. How am I coaching both sides? How am I making sure I'm seeing everything? Where do I stand? But yeah, it was a lot of stuff that helps you really develop as a coach or receiver, and that's awesome to hear you say that and me not just feeling delusional about that. But you know, you had a 1,000-yard receiver in each season, 3 wide receivers in the top 10 yards in the conference, 4 all-conference receivers in 2 seasons. So quickly you found your niche, man, and got those guys performing and got them playing well. You know, one of the things that I think is pretty cool, without me prompting you here, was you mentioned You start calling buddies up. You start just reaching out in the profession and saying, man, hey, how can I get the best out of these guys? Why was that important for you to pick that phone up and kind of call and ask around?
I think for my players, make sure I'm giving them the proper information. You know what I mean? And I have different tools in their toolbox to improve their game. You know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest thing is those guys having answers. As a coach, that's the biggest thing. When you don't have an answer to a question, what are we doing? You're almost stealing from the university. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure you have every answer. So I just want to make sure as a coach, I'm giving them every resource, every avenue, and different players have different skill sets, releases, and how they get open. You know what I mean? And I wanted to make sure like every body type's a little bit different, and everybody's a little bit different how they run routes, how they catch the football, how they get open. So I was just calling different guys. I got a big 6'4" kid that's long, big, but he's not right off the line. Well, how do we help him get off the line? Now, what are things you do to with different releases, being physical at the line of scrimmage to get him open? Or I got a little guy. That gets swallowed up sometimes. So how do I create leverage to get him open and get him open for different releases? So that was the biggest thing. I wanted to make sure I had answers for those players.
Yeah,
that was the biggest. If I wasn't doing that, was the thing. I love those guys so much. I cared about them. That's the biggest thing with any player to a coach. They want to make sure you get them better.
That's right.
And I want to make sure I was doing that as a position coach. That was the biggest reason. That was really the reason why. And I had guys in this profession that Coach Whitehouse, Grant Hurd's another one that I had at IU that was really good. That helped me as well. So those things were big for me. I wanted to make sure I had those answers for those kids.
Yeah, man, that's awesome, and you got the answers. And like I said, they performed very well. In 2020, after 2 years coaching receivers, you were elevated to offensive coordinator. What's been cool with this back and forth banner a little bit between us is you talked about that GA position at Indiana. Those first couple weeks, maybe getting ripped a little bit. I'm talking about my coach pulling me to the side to say, "Quit yelling out, catch the ball." All those little things that happen early on. Those same things happen as a coordinator. Those same things happen, hopefully not for you as your first time head coach here this season, but there's these learning curves. Yeah, I'm gonna knock on some wood for you.
Thank you.
But what were some of the learning curves as you made that transition? It didn't have to be detrimental, but just something that you grew from after your first season as an OC.
Well, the one thing about it that it was COVID. So literally I got the job and then, spring, we got spring ball canceled and then we went through summer and then the fall season was canceled. So I had a whole year calendar to kind of develop a little bit and work. And so that kind of helped me because we played in that next spring. So it gave me a full calendar year to kind of get right, and get ready. And Nick Sheridan's a great friend of mine. Nick Sheridan's now the OC at Alabama. And he was in Indiana at the time who I worked under. He's a great coach. So me and him were Zooming all the time. And we had the Zoom capabilities, obviously now, and through COVID, that became a big deal. So he would give me ideas and thoughts. And I would just, honestly, what I did was, I watch games and I would go 2nd and 4. What am I calling? 2nd and 3. I'm playing the game kind of in an imaginary way, spitting the verbiage out and things like that. And obviously when you do it, it's two different worlds, but at least that's a way to kind of do it. Right. And I had that, that fall ball. We did a lot of call-up periods. Coach Wackenheim was phenomenal where he did a lot of call-up periods for me. Yeah. So instead of scripting practices, practice 5 on was a little more call it, and I got to call plays and do it in a scrimmage or a competitive situation. So that helped me out a lot. You know what I mean? That experience calling it in the fall and then playing in the spring, and that kind of helped me. And I kind of got better, a little bit better every single day. I got a little more confident, a little more comfortable. Yeah. I was good with the players. I was good with presenting and having the organization, the detail through it. And the biggest thing that was the biggest hurdle for me is I have so many things I wanted to do. I had so many ideas. So like, you do this, you watch Twitter, you got all these plays, you know what I mean? But you only call, 60 to 70 plays in the game. You end up calling things that have worked during the game more importantly. And the one thing I started doing was, I thought was smart was, I don't know if this smart, but, I look at kind of the plays per game, calls per game that you have, open field, red zone, goal line, backed up, and how many plays do I really need on that call sheet? Mm-hmm. And as I kind of kept calling plays through the season, my play sheet got a little more minimal, a little more smaller, and realized the things that I really needed before. I had all these ideas. Now I call them, half the plays in the call sheet. Right. So kind of eliminating reps that you don't need during the week. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that was the biggest thing was the organization during the week of what's a rep on Tuesday or on Wednesday or on Thursday. Yeah. And then on Saturday, you're going. But that was the hardest part, putting those calls in the sheet that are most important and most vital for you to have success. That was the hardest thing. And as I kept growing as a coordinator, I started realizing what do I really need and what can we really rep and what is really going to benefit us.
Right.
And as a staff too, like you got guys around you in your staff that want to do certain things, that want to call something, and you also want to keep them engaged. If it's an idea that you don't think is good enough or you don't like, you want to make sure you engage them, and keep growing them. And there's also ideas that they have that you want to do that are obviously very vital. So it was just that part, the different guys on the staff and kind of commanding those guys and having the best plan possible for our players that we can go execute, and through time, I think I've gotten a little bit better with that through the years, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, you got to call it. It's you calling it. It's your butt. As a position coach, you're coaching your 4 receivers and tight ends, one, O-line. And when you have the whole group, you got to make sure it's right, and that's the big thing, probably the biggest hurdle for me kind of going into it. And thank God I had a really good quarterback and some good skill players. And our core was really good in the O-line. We were pretty good. So that kind of helped me as a young coordinator. So very thankful for the guys I had player-wise. We had a really good staff as well.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. You kind of got afforded a little bit more time. I know the COVID situation wasn't obviously ideal for multiple reasons, but just been able to get afforded a little bit more time to maybe find out some things that you don't necessarily have to go through those lumps in a game. And I remember at one point and this is why this is important that you share this story, because I was sitting as a position coach, had a tough game. Our head coach was talking to our OC, and our head coach was heavily involved in our offense, and he wasn't very happy. And he's going through the call sheet and said, how many times did we call counter? How many times did we call this? It was 2. We called it 2 times. It's like, why do we have 37 reps of practice on this play that we call, once or twice in a game? And it was like, it was just a very eye-opening thing for me to see secondhand, and this is a lesson I learned. I never got to be an OC, but hearing you say that, hopefully there's some guys that can walk away from that and say, okay, cool, yeah, that's something I better. Yeah, I mean, you can scroll through Twitter and feel like you can go to the Super Bowl, man.
There's a million ideas on there, and I'm a head coach now, and I have a great offensive coordinator, Anthony Davis. I'll send him stuff, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm actually that's my guy. I'm hurting him. I'm doing. But there's so many ideas. There's so much great football out there, man. There's so many great ideas at every level of football. There's so many great ideas. And what matches your personnel, as what matches your players? And that's the biggest thing. And that's another thing I was going to bring up is the player aspect over plays. Players. I've seen players win games. I've seen coaches kind of win games, but players win games. I firmly believe that. I saw that firsthand, as a first-year coordinator, where I literally called the same play 4 times in a row, the same player, and it kept working. I was like, well, don't make this hard. We're making it algebra. It's really simple,
That's
So absolutely. So those are things I kind of took away from. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, I did want to hit on this just briefly. We talked beforehand. You ran the air raid offense at VMI. I think there was a point in time when you said you ran the air raid, and it looked very similar across the board. But I think over the years, especially as a lot of those guys have dispersed across the country, and they kind of put their own flavor to it. The air raid can look very, very different depending on who you're looking at. What's unique about that system and the ability to kind of make it your own?
Yeah, I played it at Houston, and I thought it was the neatest system in the world because there was so much catch and carry, what we were doing. And instead of running wide zone or outside zone, we were throwing a perimeter. Or, we were doing different things as like reliefs that were just extension of the run game, and the catch and carry, making guys tackle in space. That's the biggest thing I thought was great about that system was, tackling in space is hard. Yeah. And a lot of teams don't tackle now enough, because you got limited reps, you can do it, and so that's what kind of drew me to it. But really, we run 4 birds, run white cross, run white. Everybody runs those concepts, but it's more so where we're using tight ends more and still want to run the football. And I think Mike Leach, rest in peace, was really the true air raid guy that was truly still sticking to those guns and being so successful. And a lot of guys have used more pro run schemes with gap schemes and things like that. And I think the air raid really is you throw to win. I think that's the definition of it. And what we were, at least at VMI, is we just wanted to win. Whatever it took to win, whether it's throwing it 50 times a game or running it 50 times a game or being balanced, And our balance was more so getting touches to players too. Different guys getting the ball, and making sure the defense is cognizant of every player of getting the ball, and that's to me is more balance, to us. And but I love that scheme. It's neat. It's simple and it's rep oriented. It's execution oriented. The quarterback can play fast. You're playing with more pure progressions, left to right, right to left, top down, etc. And I thought as a quarterback, it was really kind of easier to teach, and really more so, it's that guy gaining confidence in the rhythm and getting the ball out. So, but playing it at Houston was so neat. I loved it. It was so cool. I thought it was awesome, and I kind of grew from that. And now I played for Coach Snyder as well at Kansas State. My dad worked for him. He had some option principles. I think having the option with the air raid, because down the goal line, teams are gapped out. You got to have some option principles, and that's what a lot of teams are doing now, in my humble opinion. It's really option-oriented offense.
Yeah.
Just out of the gun and a little more appealing for players to come and play, but it's all that same kind of that format. That makes sense.
That's
yes, sir.
Right. Yeah. Well, you definitely put it to work. Top 2 in conference in scoring and offense, passing efficiency, during your time there. Obviously you have to transition out of there and you end up at the University of Richmond. So you're a little bit more established. You've had a title at this point in time. You got a big resume kind of sitting on your sheet of paper for yourself. How did the Richmond job come about? How did you get that job?
Yeah.
Just talk to us about that.
Really unique. So Russ Huseman's the head coach. He's still the head coach now.
Mm-hmm.
Great coach. So his son, Jacob Huseman, was the tight end coach at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga.
Mm-hmm.
So Chattanooga University. So we play against Chat every year at VMI. And Coach Huseman in Richmond, that the year before I went there, they were on a bye week.
Okay.
So Coach Huseman drove 2 hours west towards VMI. We're playing at home to see his son Jacob play, our coach. And we beat Chat that year. We beat them. They were really good on defense. They were 4 down, cover 4 quarters, cone coverage, many, and they were really good up front. They were really good in the back end. They were really good defense, well coached. And we kind of didn't start off hot. In the second half, we wore them out and scored a lot of points, won 37-34. We had a really good, team win, and Coach Huseman was there. And I think he liked what he saw, and they had an opening after the season. He called me, I think, 2 days before Thanksgiving. He's like, Stanley, I want to give you a call about the University of Richmond OC job. I called him right back. I know Richmond was a great job. My dad worked there under Danny Rocco years past. Mm-hmm. So I knew it was a great job. They've won. And I knew they were really good on defense because Coach Huseman's a defensive guy. And they just had to improve on offense. So took that job and got it. I loved my time there under Coach Huseman at Richmond. Those players, they were great. It was a great town, great city, great location, great school. And we had great kids, more importantly. So I really enjoyed my time there at Richmond. That's kind of how it all came to fruition. I didn't even know Coach Huseman before that. I never met him. So as I got to know him, it was great.
That old saying, you're always been interviewed. Like, you never know who's watching and the importance that's holding. That's pretty cool, man, that worked out like that. Now, you're able to bring some very quick success there from an offensive standpoint. You guys were top 25 in FCS in 10 offensive statistical categories, which is kind of insane. FCS playoff berth, average little over around 32 points per game. What, in comparison to that first time at VMI where you still had a lot of success, what was the difference that time? I know it's your third year as an offensive coordinator, but you're in a new school, new outfit, new kids. What was the difference?
I think obviously through time, the CAA was a little bit different than SoCon. Yeah. The leagues were different. Both are great leagues. Right. Both are competitive. The CAA is a really physical league, up front, and you got to win the trenches a little bit. You got to be able to run the ball a little bit, late in the game or during the game, critical moments. And we also have really good. I brought in Reese Udinski, the quarterback, Jacob Harris, and Nick DeGennaro as a wideout. Those 3 players elevated our offense for sure. But we had a really good defense already. And I knew, I kind of told Coach Huseman, like, we're on ball control, play fast. He's like, and Coach Huseman's not really an offensive guy. And he's like, what is this air raid? I don't know what this is. I'm like, Coach, just a ball controlled offense that just throws instead of run the ball sometimes. And we'll run the ball versus light boxes, etc. He's like, okay. He's like, just don't hurry up and punt. I'm like, yes, sir, I got you. No problem. Right. So that kind of, worked out. So we had a really good defense. So what we did was we kind of, ball control on offense and maintain possession and score and kept the defense off the field because we were really good on defense. And we found ways to win together a little bit. And that was a little bit of a different approach. I was at VMI. I was just trying to score every time I got the ball. I was a little more aggressive. And I was still fairly aggressive at Richmond, but I knew we had a really good defense. So the way I called the game was a little bit different. because I knew that we had a good defense, and I knew that we ball controlled and played smart, and was good on third down and kept drives alive. And that was a little bit different, and we ran the ball a little bit more at Richmond a little bit. And I'd done in the past. We had two good backs and pretty good core, and so that was just a little bit different the way I called the game.
Yeah.
You know, just a little bit. And I still ran the same system, and I still called the same plays and kind of add things as I went. And that's another thing I did too is, through the years is, things that I liked, I made it a tempo play or one word call. And I might have called it a different term, but I kind of just grew the system, grew the plays and watching different offense. I remember watching much Kentucky that year in my off-season study, watching Bailey Zappi and what they were doing. That guy's at Texas Tech now, and all the quicks and the stacks and things like that, and the emphasis of bunches and kind of grew that, every year. And I always watch three teams each year in the offseason that are similar to what we are.
Yeah.
And also look at teams that have, I want to say lower talent, but find ways to win and score,
Absolutely,
and
man.
what they're doing, I think those guys do a great job. So that's kind of how it all came to fruition there in 22 was I kind of grew each year, and I knew I had a really good defense, so I could find ways to maintain the ball and find ways to win,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and find ways to win together. And we had a great, complimentary football was at a premium that year, as a team. So it was a really good year. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I love what you just said there. That just always resonates with me a little bit in terms of, I think a lot of guys do. They pull their cut-ups up, or they pull up a couple teams that they like, and it's just funny how often it's like, hey, man, did you watch Alabama's power cut-up, man? What do you think? I'm like, yeah. We got a bunch of 5-stars. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
and not taking anything away from what those guys do, because they're playing against a bunch of really good guys. But, sometimes when you look at your program and say, okay, hey, who are we? Do we have the top talent in the conference and the district or whatnot? Okay, we don't. Let's go find like teams that are doing more with less. Hey, do we have the top talent? Okay, cool. Maybe we don't have to make 3rd and 1 as hard as we've had to in the past this year, because we got good guys. I just think that's such an interesting way. I mean, a lot of people don't denote that part. Guys that are just doing more with less, and maybe look a little bit more like you in terms of talent. Yeah, man. So lots of success there. It's kind of a quick stint. You're kind of a one and done there, and then after that season, you were hired as not as the head coach. We're going to get to that in a second, but you were hired at Western Michigan staff as the offensive coordinator. At this point in time, you're all of a sudden a seasoned offensive coordinator at this point, right? You're rolling into your 4th season. And that's funny, the face you made there, because I don't know if you ever feel like you're seasoned. You're always trying to figure it out. But yeah, you've done it before. You've had a high amount of success at some different types of institutions. What's your mentality as you're walking into Western Michigan? And once again, let me prep this up. Two first-team All-MAC selections, MAC freshman of the year, top 5 MAC in passing offense, total offense, first down scoring, and offense efficiency. So you go do a heck of a job. But just between the 2 years of yours, like what's the difference from your mentality as you're walking into these jobs now?
Yeah, so coming from Richmond to Western, it's FCS to FBS, so I was hungry. I'm still am, but hungry and humble to go prove it at a higher level, in the MAC. And I know the MAC's a great league. The MAC, it's everybody's game. Anybody can be beat. You play on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, and it's such a great league and an explosive league. There's a lot of great players out of that league, you know what I mean? And so what drew me to that job, obviously, was the higher up pay and obviously the job itself, playing in the FBS and being in the MAC. And it was definitely a jump. I thought the O-line and the D-line was much better in that league compared to the FCS. I thought the CA and the MAC had some similarities, but the big difference was the core. We had to block Marshawn Nealand every day in practice. He was a 2nd-round pick by the Cowboys. Right. And that's when I knew, this is a little bit different. It's a different league. And but it was a really great experience for me. We had a really good staff there. The guys I worked with on offense were really, really good. We were actually inheriting not a very good offense at the time. They've been really good on offense in Western in the past with, Sky Moore, Caleb Ellerby. They were scoring. They were really good. They just had one down year, and we were actually the worst offense in the MAC before where it was. And that next year we had to improve. And I remember that spring, I was like, man, we got to get a lot better. We got to keep improving. But the kids bought in, they worked, and they believed in our vision and what we were doing as staff. And we had a couple of transfers, and they're all FCS kids. Our best receiver, the kid you mentioned, that receiver was the Sacred Heart transfer. And he was a second team on any NEC league, Northeast Conference. And not a lot of people knew about him, but I knew him out of high school. Was a really good player. Was a first-team All-MAC kid. Our tackle came from Long Island University.
Yeah.
And our quarterback was an ODU transfer that came over. So we were a hungry group, at Western Michigan, especially on offense. And Coach Esposito was our defensive coordinator. Was a great coach as well in defense. They were good. So I was really hungry and humble once I got there. My ankles were taped. I knew the MAC was a good league.
Yeah.
We had to play, Iowa week 3 or 4, which was an eye-opening experience. They were the best defense I've ever seen. I mean, they were really good. So calling it versus those type of opponents, Mississippi State, Iowa, it was eye-opening, and it made me a better coach. It really did. You got to find ways, man. And so I was very thankful for that time. Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. Well, did a good job there. Obviously, kind of leads you up into your current role. Following that season, you were hired as the head coach at Stony Brook. As usual, how did the job opportunity come about? More importantly, why were you the guy? You hadn't head coached before. Just younger guy trying to figure the profession out. Why were you selected?
Absolutely. I was shocked too. So, we at Stony Brook, I was at Richmond. 22, we played Stony Brook at home here at Richmond. And we beat them fairly good, 51-7. I forget. We had a really good game offensively. I think our athletic director, was kind of impressed with what we did offensively as a team, and we won the game as a team. So
yeah.
I think that kind of helped me a little bit, when that process kind of started up. I got reached out, about the job, and I was interested for sure. I did a Zoom interview with the AD and try to prepare the best I could. I'd never done a head coaching interview. I've done kind of lighter interviews, but nothing kind of that extreme with different jobs before that. So that was like my first really official one. And I wasn't sure how it would go, but I prepared in every facet. I wrote down, had a manual already kind of done prior of how I knew I want to be a head coach.
Yeah.
How I run the program and, scheduling, development of players, evaluation, all those things that kind of go into it. And did the best I could and had a first Zoom and then had a second Zoom. And then they brought me in person, and didn't know what to expect at all three categories. I didn't know what to expect.
Right.
Well, just myself, and I knew my limitations. I was a younger coach, and I haven't been a head coach before, but I had a plan. I had a plan and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to run the program. And I guess they bought into it and got the job, and I'm very thankful for it. And I did the best I could there, and just didn't know what to expect though with the whole interview process, to be honest. Because I've done coordinator interviews. I was fine. Position jobs, fine. I've done those. I've never done a true head coaching interview. And but the biggest thing I wanted to be organized and wanted to have the plan that I wanted to do. Because at the end of the day, once you get there, you better stick to that plan. You can't be a phony in that interview because it may not be a fit both ways.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I lucked into that and very thankful to be here for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And you don't necessarily have to dive into the plan here for the question, but like you say, you got a plan to run a program, but you've never done it before. So what were you doing along the way in the profession to make sure that you had one?
That's a great one. So everywhere I've kind of been, even at Kansas, like Bill Snyder, I love the way he ran his off-season development and player development. He was the best.
Yeah.
I thought, arguably, ever, at Kansas State, which is not a hard place to win at the time. He found ways to win. So the player development piece, I took to Coach Snyder. I thought it was tremendous. Kevin Wilson, I really liked what he did offensively, as an offensive coach. And Tom Allen, I got to work with Tom Allen as well. He's a defensive coach. And what he did defensively and how he was a really good morale guy with the team and, the culture and things like that. I like that. Coach Walkenheim, same thing. Culture, recruiting, things I liked that he did. Same with Coach Hughes. So all those guys that kind of worked for Saul, I kind of took what I liked from each coach. Mm-hmm. And I try to make it into what I wanted to do. And there's things that I've wanted to do, obviously, with our players. So all that was kind of into one piece, you know what I mean, and presented it that way. So that's kind of how it all came to fruition. There's certain things that each coach has. Every coach has a strength, as you know. Every coach has a strength and that they're really good at. And at the end of the day, you got to be yourself. But there's plans in place that you can have and ideas and thoughts and how to develop players and how to evaluate players. So all those things kind of came to fruition when I got it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. Like I thought you hit the nail on the head with the most important part is like, you go and find those things that are really well done by Coach Snyder, but still putting your flavor on all of it. Just making sure so it's authentic and it's you don't feel like you're having to fake it till you make it type deal.
Correct.
I pinpointed some in our conversation. It was that kind of that first interview when you were talking a little bit about like the flow of the interview, how it could have went and all that kind of stuff. Now being a first-time head coach, you know, I don't know how many interviews you've had to do or anything like that, but you got to hire staff for the first time, for a program, offense and defensive guys, the special teams, support staff, everything that goes into that. You know, what did you look for? And, you know, what was your process to interview if you did execute any of those?
Great. So I hired a couple guys I've worked with before. I knew I wanted to bring them.
Yeah.
And I worked with them. I've been in the trenches with them. So you know what you're getting. But the two things I wanted in our coach, I tell our recruits this, I wanted good people. I wanted guys I could trust. They're not hidden agendas. You know, they're on the team. They want to be a part of the team. They want to, you know, help kids. And I wanted good teachers, especially from our assistant coaches. Yeah. You know what I mean? I want to be great. We're all just teachers, as you know. So we got to be a great teacher, a fundamental teacher. And then with our coordinators, you know, I wanted them obviously to be organized and detailed in what they're doing, because I try to be that way at some points. And, you know, schematically, I wanted to, you know, with our offense, I knew what I want to do with our offense. You know, with our defense, I wanted to kind of match what we were doing in special teams and how we're going to win together a little bit in all three phases. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the process that I had. And I had to interview guys. You know, I interviewed our defensive coordinator, Scott Lewis. I went against Coach Lewis twice. You know, he was at St. Francis in Pennsylvania, where they've done a great job there. They're really good on defense. It's an NEC school. We have 45 scholarships. They're almost beating Akron. They should have beat us at Richmond, you know, and they were overachieving, I thought. And they had really good players. And so I had a chance to interview them. I knew I wanted them. So I went against them every single day. I went against them twice and evaluated him for a week. That was a great interview. I saw what he did on third down, fourth down, you know, base down. I kind of knew how he called the game. So I kind of knew what I wanted there. Our special teams coordinator is a guy I worked with at Concord, Kevin Elliott, a guy that I knew and trusted. He was a really good special teams coach at Concord, and he was at Missouri State. So, and then AD is our offensive coordinator, who was a running back coach at Western and at DMI. He knew what we wanted to do on offense. Does a great job with our staff and our players. So hiring those guys was the most critical part, you know, those coordinators. And then position coaches, I kind of obviously have the guys that I want, but I let the coordinators obviously have great input. We do it together a little bit. We collaborated on that. But I wanted good people. You know, I didn't want, at the end of the day, you got to work with these guys consistently. You got to communicate. Yeah. And there's got to be a good fit with that, you know, what we wanted. And you might be a really good X and O's guy, and that's awesome. But if you're not, obviously not a fit that way or not a good teacher, that's hard. You know what I mean? So those are things that we kind of look for throughout that process. And it was a long process. You know, it really was. And when I first got the job, I wanted to make sure our roster was good, our players. Like I was all about the guys here. I met with every player. And I Zoomed with some guys. Some guys were still taking finals. And I met with each player. And I got to know them. And then I kind of did the staff kind of later, because I want to make sure our own was good here. Yeah. So, but that was really a whirlwind, man. That first month, it was rolling. During Christmas, we're obviously in transition, ready to move here to New York, which is, you got to go through the bridge to get here. So, it was definitely a whirlwind, but it all worked out. Yeah. And it was awesome. Yes, sir.
That's awesome, Coach. Well, I always appreciate the time we can catch up, man. Before I let you go, though, I started this off with the mention in the 35 under 35. You were part of that 2022 class. Just really quick, man, why was that a good deal for you, and why would you encourage others to apply for that?
It was an awesome day. It was awesome. I learned so much like that whole day, and I got to meet other people and obviously previous people that were in that 35 or 35 and their experiences. And, I got to talk about, agents, just different things that happens within coaching and the connections and just the people. I'm still close to a lot of these guys, and the guys I have numerous jobs at different levels and different places, and you're still in contact with those guys. So it's a really good brotherhood and bond, I would say. Braxton, Harris as well. He's at Campbell as the head coach. We were in the same class. Yeah. We're going against each other week 4. You know what I mean? So it's crazy that, things like that happen. You know what I mean? And there's other guys I should mention that are all out there. And it was a great event, great day, well organized. I learned a lot, took a lot of notes. Coach James Franklin spoke to us as well, who I knew in the past, and he spoke about different topics and how to get in the profession, how to work. And it's just reminders of why you're doing things, why you're in this profession, man. That's why I loved it. And there's like-minded people around you. I think it's tremendous. It's a great event. It's A+. So it was awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, you guys continue to elevate it, man. Just doing well, and once you get out and prior to, obviously. But I appreciate you holding that standard high for what we're looking for in that 35 under 35. Super excited about watching watching you guys get busy for the first year for you, man, and wish you nothing but the best, okay?
Appreciate you so much. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, man, it was a blast. I appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Thank you.
CoachComm has been delivering tough headsets for tough teams for more than 31 years. It's why 97% of FBS teams and thousands of high schools across the country rely on CoachComm. Get the best for your team. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcast, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.